Welcome in to another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. Jack, I hear you're doing pretty darn well in your JMU dynasty.
So far, so good. We did lose to Charlotte week 1, which was a bummer. And I've been telling JMU fans, you got to take the 49ers seriously. Other than that, we steamrolled UNC, did survive a scare against Southern Miss. I threw 4 interceptions. 3 of them were pick sixes, and they had a fumble return for a touchdown, but I outscored them and then took down Georgia State 70-7. So, things are looking up for the dynasty.
Pretty good stuff there. Yeah, I was a little disappointed because I got a text from you saying that my guy, Chauncey Logan, had an interception to secure the win over Charlotte in your dynasty, only to then receive a text about a minute and a half later saying that you would actually choke the game away.
Okay, look, in fairness, I should have been able to ice the game. I did miss the field goal. The field goal it's really hard to kick a late game important field goal in the video game, but that's besides the point. We can talk college football later on, college football, the video game. We'll also talk college football throughout this entire podcast. But first, we got Delvin Joyce joining us. Delvin, JMU Athletics Hall of Famer. He's the all-time leader in career all-purpose yards. And he's taken some time out of his Wednesday to talk with us about his JMU career, NFL career, and running game. So, Delvin, how are you doing?
Fantastic, man. I'm doing great. Thanks for the reminder that I used to be somebody. So I may have to have you tell that to my kids at one point.
Look, you got the jersey behind you. I feel like you got the reminder often.
There you go. Yeah, I guess you're right. But this is a treat for me to be on here with you guys. I listen to you guys all the time, especially when I'm wearing my rose-colored JMU glasses, and you guys always bring me back down to earth. So, I
think we need to put that like in our About Us section. Yeah.
Yeah. Tune into us when you need to. I think it's our own way of. I think we call it therapy whenever it's after a tough game where we have to just get all of our terrible thoughts out. And we found that a podcast is probably the best way to complain about a Utah State nail biter.
That's right. That we almost choked away like you choked away that Charlotte game.
I did choke it away, guys. Look, it was the first game of the season. We were getting the jitters out. I hadn't figured out how to run the option. Now that I know how to run the speed option, it's over. I mean, Io is running for no joke 250 yards per game.
Let's go. I love that. I love it.
It's a great time. It's awesome. I appreciate that face, Bennett.
That's impressive stuff. Yeah, the running game looks like it could be impressive this year. I don't think there are any running backs on the roster who are going to run for 1,000 career yards, have 1,000 career receiving yards, and 1,000 career return yards, which Delvin was able to do at JMU. I was just curious, how does one, I guess, get the role of both running back, returner, get that many receptions? Do you have to lobby coaches? What was it about your skill set that let you do a little bit of everything extremely well?
Well, it's interesting, man. I think part of it is just being a jack of all trades, master of none. I think on some level, I was a pretty good running back, but I wasn't a great running back. I had great hands. I had good hands, but I didn't have great hands, great enough to be a receiver. And then there was a guy named Curtis Keaton who actually transferred to JMU from West Virginia, and he became the feature running back, and I had to move to receiver that year. And so I just think it was a combination of a lot of things, but thankful that I had the opportunity to do a lot of things for the team.
That's awesome. I got to know, how did you find your way to Harrisonburg? How'd you end up choosing JMU? Because this was an era that it wasn't the pomp and circumstance that it is now around JMU.
Yeah, so I have a very convoluted story when it comes to JMU. You guys may know this. I was actually an unrecruited, uninvited walk-on. So I had some friends from my high school that were going to JMU. I actually applied as a regular student. At the time, they had a program for Black kids called Perspectives Weekend. And I came to JMU for Perspectives Weekend, where I got to be a high school student on campus. And lo and behold, they actually put me with football players. And it's just kind of a crazy story. But I decided, I wanted to come to JMU because of that experience, and showed up on the first day of school after they had finished training camp for an open tryout. And they let me somehow on the team magically.
So how does that go with Mickey Matthews? We've heard the stories of him and everything. Was this was Mickey era, right?
Yeah, so it was Mickey Error, but my coach, my freshman year was a guy named Alex Wood. So this was the Alex Wood year. So I had Alex the first 2 years, Coach Wood the first 2 years. And I'm so thankful to that guy. Like, he didn't have a phenomenal JMU coaching career, but he gave me an opportunity. So I am forever grateful to that dude. And to be honest, I don't know that I would even make the team right now. Like, I don't doubt that I would be talented enough to be on the team. But I just think where the program is right now, I don't think that I would even have been given the opportunity to make the team, right? Like, the program is just in such a good place.
That's fascinating. Yeah. So how do you go from uninvited walk-on to then doing everything? I guess when did you start to, like, I know it sounded like you weren't sure you were even gonna like get on the team. When were you sure that, like, hey, I'm on the team and I'm good enough to contribute for the team?
Yeah. So there's this thing called scout team, and I was scout team tackling dummy extraordinaire. And I'm telling you, my job, my entire mission in life was to go out and embarrass the first team defense. So once I had that opportunity, and by the way, like, they would make me like the feature back of the other team, and I was trying to embarrass everybody on the other team. So much so that most practices I didn't have any skin on my arms. Like, we had the old school turf back in the day. You know what I'm talking about?
The painted concrete.
Oh, it was awful. So, you leave practice and you have no skin anywhere. But that was my goal, to embarrass the defense. And then, the coaches started to recognize that I actually had talent, and they put me on the travel squad, even as a true freshman who had no scholarship money. Thankfully, they didn't blow my red shirt, and I just started to build confidence. There's this thing where when you actually start to play with people, you see them on TV and they look superhuman, but when you actually get on the field and you get around them, you realize that you can actually play with them. And the more I started to build that confidence, the more I recognized that I could play.
And now you're one of the few Dukes that then had an NFL career, went on to play in the pros, and a lot of JMU players right now, or not a lot, I think 3 or 4 of them, undrafted free agents, potentially trying to fight for that 53-man roster spot. What was your career and journey like within the NFL with the Giants?
Yeah, so also convoluted, just like with JMU, I didn't get drafted, or I didn't get signed as an undrafted free agent right out of college. So I actually went to work as a financial advisor right out of college, right, for like 6 months. And in fact, I was sitting at a cubicle when the player pro personnel for the Giants actually called me to tell me they wanted to bring me in for a workout. Like, I legit thought it was Ashton Kutcher. You guys don't even know who that is because you're so young.
Punk.
Yeah,
we're
okay.
not that young. I know Punk.
Thank you. I was gonna say, man, but I thought I was getting punked. I was like, yo, who is this playing on my phone? And so, to have an opportunity to play pro football was always a dream, but to have an opportunity to do it in New York, in that city, with those fans and with some of the rock stars that we had on the team, I mean, I learned so much about how to be a professional, not just on the field, but also off the field, which I think is carried over into my professional life now.
Yeah, are you still doing, I guess, financial planning type things? What's your current gig? And I guess what was it like transitioning from the NFL into what you do now?
Yeah, I'm a certified financial planner, and so I help people, build and grow wealth and create plans for their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. The transition was cool, primarily because I started in the industry before I came to the Giants. I took advantage of the NFL's off-season internship program every year. So I did an internship every single year to make sure that when I was done playing football, the only thing on my resume wasn't football player, right? And so did that, and I learned how to talk to people and navigate corporate America. And so the transition for me wasn't tough. I'd say the thing that a lot of players struggle with is that when they're done with that NFL career, they have no idea what they want to do, right? And you tend to sort of hang around to figure out if it's actually over. And you waste a lot of time, you waste a lot of good years, and you also waste a lot of money. And so for me, because I felt like I was always playing with house money, when it was done, I was like, all right, let's go. It's time to do it, right? And so I didn't really languish, I don't think, in that transitionary period. I went full steam ahead into my career.
I got to know the mindset that you had throughout your football career, because in high school, were you thinking I'm going to play at the collegiate level, and then you didn't get any offers, or you then decide to go to JMU as a student, and then you have to ramp back up and go as a walk on? Like, how is that mindset going through your football career?
Yeah, it's I would say my dad gave me maybe the greatest gift of my life, professionally and personally. So I like to say he gave me something called stick-to-itiveness, where you don't really give up. And so really the rap on me coming out of high school was that I was too short, right? I was like 5'3", like 150 pounds. And my dad, as an adult, was 4 feet 10 inches tall. And my dad told me to never let anybody tell me I was too small to do anything. So to your question, Jack, I never really, even though every single college and university in the country passed on me out of high school, I was never really discouraged. I just said I'll go to JMU and I'll walk on the team. And then same with the NFL. Like while I was sitting in that cubicle at my firm in Washington, D.C., I sent my highlight tape from JMU out to all 32 NFL teams, and it only took one team to call back, and it was the Giants. So, to your question, it was more so a function of stick-to-itiveness and not really being ready to give up on that goal.
I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think the football team had posted on social media you had came in pretty recently, I think, for whatever they're calling them, the Wednesday Wisdom. I think you talked about that stick-to-itiveness. What was your message to the team? I know they teased that, but didn't give a ton of insights. I was curious kind of what you talked to the current guys about.
Yeah, man. By the way, first off, that was a real treat. Like I was geeking out because what you got to know about me is I am a bigger JMU football fan than I am a JMU football alum. So the guys were like, I can't believe you know my name. I'm like, of course I know your name. I mean, right? But really the message was around fighting through adversity. And then I talked about 6 lessons that I learned throughout my professional journey or my athletic journey that helped me to transition successfully into corporate America. So things like, making sure that you're always performing at your optimal level, taking your practice seriously, those sorts of things that I learned professionally through athletics that have helped me to be successful now.
All right, so let's take off the JMU alum hat then and put on the JMU football fan hat.
Let's do it.
Last season, we went into the year, high hopes. We said the offensive line, it's a bunch of old guys. They know what they're doing. They've been together. They got Kalon Black. They have Tyson Lawton. They have Latrell Palmer. This running game should be the best in the group of 5. And at times it may have floundered. It may have looked. This is coming from a non-football player. So as I'm not watching the all-22. I'm sitting there and I'm like, why can't they just hit a hole and pick up 6 yards? Why are we averaging 3 yards a carry?
Yeah.
Is that wrong of how I'm looking at it? And also, were there actual issues that you saw as a JMU football fan from last year?
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts. I mean, I think from a fan's perspective, we all want every time they hand the ball off for it to be a home run.
Yes.
And in reality, the offensive coordinator has scripted, the entire offensive playbook. And a lot of times those plays are designed to only get 3 yards. The challenge that we had is that sometimes we were handing the ball off and we were getting negative yards. In fact, I learned from this Sports News podcast that every time we handed the ball off, we were taking like 2 points off the scoreboard. I don't know if you guys
Thank you. Expected points added is maybe the best stat in all of football.
Not this in July. Oh my.
I am an avid listener, guys. But so yeah. So I think 2 things. I mean, I think the first part is that, not every handoff is going to be a home run, but certainly you would expect to at least pick up the 3 yards if the play is designed to get 3 yards. I think the biggest challenge, because I had the same expectations for this offense coming into last season. I thought we would have a fantastic running game. I thought Kalon Black, I thought Latrell Palmer, his freshman year, I was like, this guy's going to break every single JMU rushing record. And somehow his career just like, and I love that kid. And then Van Horst got hurt again. And so obviously you guys understand that. But I think that the biggest challenge, and you guys have talked about this on your pod, is that we didn't tackle in training camp.
So this
year.
isn't, I'm not crazy for continuously bringing this up. Is this an
No.
actual thing?
No, it is an actual thing, because what you have to understand as a running back, right? As a running back, as I'm reading my holes, there are potentially opportunities for me to run a certain way or another way. And if we're not tackling to the ground, I might fool myself on these plays into thinking that this is a hole or an avenue that's going to be open on any given play, right? So you build a lot of bad habits. I think when I was with the Giants, Tiki Barber used to call it iron pyrite. He's like, oh, you took the iron pyrite, right? Which essentially means you went for that hole when really the cutback was wide open. But you saw that little flash of daylight and you thought you could hit it, but it was fool's gold. The gold was on the cutback. And if you're not tackling the running back to the ground, then, in practice, where I'm getting arm tackled and all these things, I'm going to fool myself into thinking that's the read. And I think a lot of the timing was off. I think the vision for a lot of our backs was off. I mean, they had the bouncies, right? I mean, a lot of times the cutback was there. They were bouncing it outside, trying to outrun people. And I just think in a lot of ways it didn't work.
Gotcha. I was curious from your perspective too, because for us, we'll go on, right? And we'll blame everyone. We're like, the offensive line's not doing enough. The running backs aren't doing enough. How much of it can you tell, I guess, when you're watching is like, oh, that's clearly the offensive line is missing an assignment or something like that? Or how much of it was that the guys were maybe not cutting back when they should have last year?
Yeah, when you see a guy get tackled in the backfield for a loss, I mean, typically that's going to be a blown assignment on the offensive line. So those are pretty easy to pick up. I would tell you more times than not, there was a lack of vision and a lack of reads from some of our running backs. Like, and I'm watching. And by the way, I'm a crazy fan. You do not want to watch a JMU football game with me in person or at my house, because I'm going crazy. And there were so many times that, like, I just wanted to break my, coffee table because they just missed the reads. And I'm telling you, it's because the timing and a lot of the reads were off because they just weren't used to the contact and the tackling from training camp.
So now looking at this season, bring back Tyshawn Wyatt in a big way with the NIL. Shout out to the Montpelier Collective for keeping Tyshawn Wyatt. Then you got Carter Sweezy, Tanner Morris, Cole Pott. The offensive line, they're experienced, and I feel like we're on Groundhog Day. We're saying it all again a year later. They're experienced. They're old. They have arguably the best transfer group of 5 running back in Adei, George Petaway. I feel like we're saying the same thing again. What can this group do, offensive line and running back, to have a more successful season and return to kind of that ground and pound successful running game that we've been accustomed to as JMU fans?
Well, I do think the first key is the offensive line has to stay healthy, right? I think we had some injuries early last year that also kind of threw off some of the continuity along the offensive line. So if this group can stay healthy, and it looks like they're doing the work in the weight room to stay healthy, if they can stay healthy, they're going to be amazing. Cole Potts, I think, is a pro. I've known Cole since he was in high school. I had a friend who was like, I got this kid, he's getting recruited by JMU, send him a video. And I recorded a video and I was like, yo, you got to go to JMU. So I think he is a pro as I've watched his career. But I think the other factor is that we actually have some home run hitters like Petaway and Adei. I think those guys are absolute home run hitters in the same way that Khalid Abdullah and what's my other guy that was there with Abdullah?
Carden.
Carden, and then the other
Marcus
kid,
Marshall.
Trey Sharp.
No, come on, man. You're making me feel old now. I can't remember anything.
He was there with Khalid?
He was there with Khalid, or right after Khalid. He just graduated like 2 years ago. Yeah.
Oh,
Percy.
Percy, yeah.
I forgot how old Percy was, that he overlapped with like everybody. Yeah.
Percy was a sophomore. Percy played for like 2 years while I was still in school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that guy played like 12 years, I think. But I think, those guys were certified home run hitters, and that's what I think Petaway and Adei are. And that's going to have a huge impact, because if you got to guard against the home run, every now and then, you're just going to be able to pick up 4, 5, 6 yards and start to gut some teams.
You mentioned the vision. I'm always curious because obviously this comes as a surprise to no one. I was never a running back And when you watch
Really?
on when you watch on your couch, you can see everything because the camera's so high. It's like, oh my God, why did this guy not cut back or go around? Obviously different if you're most of the running backs are below 6 feet tall, right? The offensive linemen are 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". How do you sort of develop that vision to know where to go and to hit the right spots, even when it's quite crowded at the line of scrimmage?
It's a hard thing. But you got to have patience. And so really, where I think most running backs fail is that from a young age you're taught to hit the hole hard, right? Hit the hole as hard as you can. And in a lot of cases, when you're running a pro style offense, there's so many blocking schemes that are happening at the line of scrimmage, and a lot of those schemes are developing late. And I think if you look at Le'Veon Bell, he's like the most patient running back ever, and he's the best at just letting the play develop. There's a big difference though between letting the play develop and tiptoeing, right? So at some point you got to make a decision and put your foot in the ground and go north and south. But I think that's one of the things that made Latrell, I was so excited about Latrell Palmer because he was such a patient runner. But unfortunately, with our scheme last year, just his patience didn't really work out for him, and then he had the ball handling issues. So, but I think it's the patience that helps you to see the play develop so that you can see more.
Palmer, yeah, his freshman year, I feel like he had a few where he like waited for a second, then hit the hole and burst out. I mean, he was pretty unbelievable when he was on.
He was amazing. Yeah. He was like beast mode. I thought he was, beast mode reincarnated.
Yeah.
As a Seahawks fan, I was very excited with he did the dreads and all, and he'd just be flying at the goal. So many. The fumble rooskies were the issues with him. He had the fumbles. Delvin, my last question. I was going between two. I'm gonna go with this one here. We talk a lot about growth. Like we see Latrell year one, and we go every year, this guy's just gonna get better and better. Even Chauncey Logan, his freshman year, we expected him to take a massive step forward. Now, some injuries, maybe scheme, the emergence of D'Angelo Pons, he didn't necessarily take the extreme next step. Do we as fans maybe overvalue the growth we are going to see from a player from year to year? And is it more so a long-term vision?
Yeah, that's a really hard question. I think part of it is there's always that sophomore slump. Like you always have these amazing expectations, especially if you come off a great freshman campaign. And then expectations go through the roof. But I also think that a lot of times players have a hard time meeting those expectations, especially in this day and age of social media where everybody's patting you on the back and telling you how great you are. And so I do think there is a lag between how hard you work in the off season based on some of your prior success. And I think the great ones continuously find a way to push themselves in the off season, work just as hard as they did to get there. And that's where I think you see some of the extraordinary growth from year to year. Not saying that that's not the case for some of those players, but I think there's a couple of other factors. You never know how the scheme changes, how the coaches may decide to use someone a different way because they saw some of that talent in a prior year. And so while they're still being effective, they're just not being utilized the same way that got them the same sort of notoriety in their prior year. So I think there's a combination.
I've got a question for you. My last one. Who is outside of yourself, who would be your favorite JMU running back of all time? And what did you like about their game?
My favorite JMU running back. And by the way, I watched that episode. I was so humble that you guys even included me because I didn't belong on the list, by the way. But I will tell you that my favorite JMU running back has to be Curtis Keaton.
I knew that was coming.
And I'm telling you, I'm just telling you guys, Curtis Keaton is the best football player to ever put on a JMU football uniform.
Wow.
Period.
Over Rodney Landers.
If you were to look at, and by the way, they wore the same number. And I loved Rodney Landers. But apples and oranges. The guy was a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
But if you looked at Curtis Keaton, the guy looked like a football player. I've never seen anybody work as hard as that dude. Like that guy taught me how to work hard. I promise you, I don't have an NFL career if I don't work out with Curtis Keaton in the off season, right? So he worked hard. The only thing, he didn't have great hands. And I hope he's watching this, because he would say he had amazing hands, but the guy had bricks for hands. But as far as toting the mail, nobody could run the football. He was the quintessential football player. He had vision. He had speed. He had strength. I mean, and he had durability. The guy never got hurt.
Man, should have talked to you before we did our blind rankings.
Who did we? Number 1 was Warren Marshall, right?
Yeah, I gave him a lot of love for the all-time rushing.
He's all-time rushing leader.
Yeah.
Well, Delvin, you had to be included because you have the RB next, or T, however they did it back in the Alex Wood days. I don't know if it was tailback or halfback or RB, whatever it was. But you have the RB next to your name and your number 1 in the all-purpose yards. So that if that was left out, that would have been a tough look.
I'll take that. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate everything that you guys do. You guys have a great podcast. I'm serious. Whenever I am like, yo, JMU is going to the college football playoffs, I just turn your podcast on and you guys bring me right back down.
I think I might be the opposite this year. Just looking at the roster, I'm going. I might be too optimistic on them this year.
Let's go, Bennett. Let's go.
Excited.
All right, yeah. I might be the one that has to throw water. I'm still the one. I've talked with a few people. I'm still very worried about the Charlotte game, and some fans are thinking that it's going to be. Look, I think I'm mentally preparing for a loss, but that's just me.
I too am worried about the Charlotte game. Also because I live in Charlotte.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
If we lost to Charlotte, I mean, that would be hell for me.
Yeah.
But I'm hosting a tailgate in my neighborhood, so Curtis Keaton lives in my neighborhood with me, and so we're gonna have a tailgate. So if you guys want to come down, let's do it.
Look, that feels like
it's going to be a tough game. I lived in Charlotte as well. Worked for UNC Charlotte. The 49ers gave me some paychecks over the years. If JMU loses, I'm not going to hear the end of it from them.
The quarterback concerns me. The transfer from Florida.
That's what
I just don't know what he is and how he's going to play, and that's what worries me a little bit.
Yeah. Look, he's really good in the video game.
Especially because we don't. But I was going to say, especially because we don't know what's happening with our defense right now, especially our defensive line, and so, but we'll see.
That feels. I was going to say it feels unfair though for like a Turkey Bowl Thanksgiving football game. You could have Delvin Joyce and Curtis Keaton in the same neighborhood. That doesn't seem fair. Kids involved. I mean, my God.
I'm a golfer, man. I play golf and table tennis. That's it.
All right.
That'd be a loaded all-star Turkey Bowl type of team.
It would.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, Delvin, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and hope to have you on. We might have to bring you on every few weeks to talk running game updates because the insights you gave were fantastic.
Let's do it, man. I'm in. I appreciate you guys, man. Let's do it again. Go Dukes.
Awesome. Go Dukes. Amazing insights. You know,
JMU Hall of Famer on the podcast.
First JMU Hall of Famer on the podcast. Good claps.
Yeah,
good claps.
He's awesome. Some good insights there because at times we were very confused last year, right? The offensive line's so good. They're pass protecting like animals. Why can't they run the ball? That does make some sense that maybe the vision wasn't quite what you would have expected from some of the running backs.
And also the tackling. Look,
the tackling,
people have been making fun of me about that take.
The running back side of that take?
Well, no, I just thought that was negatively impacting the team as a whole, both defensively early on because of blown tackles.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the offensive side of it, and it makes total sense. Ross or 11, Delvin said that Curtis Keaton, in his opinion, best player to ever put on the purple and gold, put on a JMU jersey. Rodney Landers may want to have a word. Charles Haley might have a different opinion. I will say, though, maybe this is me not fully understanding what Charles Haley did while at JMU. I feel like his post-JMU career is really, really good and is the best of any former Duke. I'm not sure if you put Jalen Green next to Charles Haley, like just statistic-wise, and you took away their names, I think Jalen Green would have the better JMU career.
He did have, when he finished his career, he led JMU with 506 career tackles, all-time tackle leader.
Okay, so just over about 125 a year
Yeah, I don't know.
as a defensive end. Wow.
I don't know if.
Okay. Why are they running it on his side that much?
I don't know. Maybe did he play in sort of a linebackery role? Was he fully defensive end? I don't know how you get that many tackles because he had 147 as a junior. So
As
he
a
started his
D
career.
end?
So no, he started as an outside linebacker, moved to inside linebacker, and then I guess they moved him to like defensive end in the pros, maybe.
Okay, that makes sense.
He also in a 21-6 win over eventual national champion Georgia Southern in 1985. He had a blocked punt, forced a fumble, deflected 3 passes, and had a sack. Guys,
Okay, so he may have been one of the greatest JMU players of all time then. I just feel like we never talk about him. I feel like we don't hype him up enough as a JMU alum.
I think that's probably true. I think it's also probably because like the football fandom, I feel like really boomed during Mickey. So like I feel like the guys from like
That's a good point.
95 on have gone like crazy with how people talk about him. And some of those guys from the earlier days are maybe a little more forgotten than they should be outside of like Haley and Gary Clark.
That's a good point. Scott Norwood, wide right, baby. That's a
Yeah.
JMU alum right there.
But you had to like ball out in the NFL for us to like still talk about you, it seems like, which is crazy.
JMU had only been playing football for less than 10 years when Charles Haley showed up. That's a great point, Ross. Or 11. All right. Do you want to dive into the next part of this podcast?
Yeah, I kind of just want you to pull up the roster and we could either screen share or not screen share.
I'll screen share. I got this.
Yeah, this will be good for the YouTube listeners. And I kind of just want to like freak out over the roster because, and this is lame, but they added the spring portal guys. Like they've had them on the team. They just haven't added them on the roster. So this isn't like new information, but they updated their heights and weights, which has just sent me into a frizzy. You gotta go grid mode. I've been going.
Are we not in? This is grid mode.
No, that's cards.
Oh, you know the different modes that well?
I know. I have it on my screen too.
Wow.
Is that visible enough, or should we go the other way? Oh yeah. Oh my God. This is everything. This is everything I dreamed it would be. Okay,
all right.
So we can
Are
go
we
either
just
way.
going down? Are we?
I was thinking we
down?
would go position group.
Okay, then give me a second. Keep talking about how
you just
excited
click
you are.
Position and it'll
look. I know how that works.
No, you don't even have to go to the tab though. Yeah, and you know what you could even do? You could, if you click height and then you click position, it'll sort. Like now it's wide receivers by height. Like every position's cool. Then also, yeah, I can do it on weight too, which is sweet. Anyway, sorry.
Do you want it on weight or do you want it on height?
I think receivers, let's go height.
Okay.
Okay, you give us the zoom. You give us that zoom again. Yeah, that's the stuff. Okay, so my overarching theme here, and that was bad if you're not watching on YouTube.
That was horrible.
But my overarching theme is that they're huge, which has me like way too excited. And I've learned this lesson, right, with the James Carpenter takes from a couple of years ago, when I was like, I don't really think a 275-pound nose tackle with no depth is enough. Little did I know he was going to play like 100% of snaps and be like an all Sun Belt player. My mistake. But they're really large this year at a number of positions. They're way bigger than they've been in the past. And me saying that is kind of like, okay, sure, Bennett. So I did come up with some stats. I found some stats on certain guys, certain position groups, mostly defense, but a little bit some other spots. Wide receiver, I don't have a lot. But I think what's interesting here, Hudson and Penny, I think, have a chance to be two really important pieces. 6'4", 6'2", 215 for Penny. Hudson's 200 pounds. I think those two have a chance to really have a big year as sort of that like number one kind of big receiver.
Penny, relative of Rashad Penny, former Seattle Seahawks first-round draft pick. That was a questionable draft pick in the first round. Mm-hmm. Now, Tajee Hudson, and I might be doing this a lot during this podcast, just like throwing it back to college football 25. Tajee Hudson, monster in college football. Also, a lot taller than I thought when I saw him yesterday.
Taking him to media day too, which seems like it could be a sign that he's had a great off season. But I was watching some Penny highlights, and I feel like I have undersold his addition. He had like he pushed near 100 yards against Oregon State, and then I think he had 5 catches for 97 yards against Boise State last year. One of those, he catches like a post route over the middle in stride, and then he stiff arms a dude and like decleats him. He's legit. Like he's a really impressive athlete. Both those guys, their size is pretty fascinating. And then you pair them with players like your dude Dollison. And then
Whoa. Sorry.
your dude Dollison, and then Cam Ross, if he's healthy. It's really been the only thing that he struggled with during his UConn career was health, is a stud. So I feel like receiver, I'm not particularly concerned, especially with the addition of Penny.
So Penny, we've undersold on. You think he could be potentially wide receiver? Could you expect Tajee Hudson wide receiver 1, Penny wide receiver 2, Cam Ross slot, and Dollison being more of a gadget wide receiver 4 type of guy?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I think sort of those, what would they be? The X? Is that the big boys?
Like we had like Reggie Brown was wide receiver 1. Elijah Surratt was more of the intermediate, or I guess not wide receiver 1, was the deep guy, which Tajee may become the Reggie Brown. You might have Penny become the Surratt, Cam Ross be the Phoenix Sproles.
I would agree with that, yeah.
And Dollison, we'll see how they use him.
I think that checks out, yeah. And they still have some other guys, like Ymir Knight is similar to Dollison. So they kind of seem like they have like 2 guys who do similar things, which is good, right? Important depth. But like Penny and Hudson have some similar skills. I mean, you can even argue that like Ross and Dollison have some similar stuff. But like Dollison and Ymir Knight are definitely kind of similar-ish players where they're really quick and maybe a little bit, quote unquote, undersized. So I don't know. I'm just super excited about what they brought in. And that doesn't even get to Maxwell Moss and Dylan Williams, those younger guys who I think have a lot of talent too.
Yeah, in college football 25, I have redshirted Dylan Williams. You want to keep that eligibility, not burn it, and keep him going. That trio of wide receivers, if we have undersold Penny, might have to do like a film breakdown on him to go up on our YouTube, similar to what we did with Dylan Morris. I think Cupshaw, if Dylan Morris, and we'll get to quarterback later on, if Dylan Morris is good, I think JMU can beat North Carolina. I don't think it's a shoo-in, but I would bet JMU in the points.
I think they have a legitimate chance to have the best offense in the Sun Belt.
So that moves us to tight end.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting group. So you have Taylor Thompson, who seemingly is expected to be tight end 1.
Phil Steele had him as the starting tight end in his preview. And
I guess
he talks to Chesney for the preview.
Yeah, so that's where I'm getting at. Kai Wright, though, is having a good camp, good workouts. He came on really well at the end of last season. A Pitt transfer, did not leave. So I expect Kai Wright could be potentially really solid. Logan Kyle, a Vanderbilt transfer, really good in college football 25. I'll stop making that joke as we move on, but I think
fast,
it is he's very fast. Broke a 70-yard touchdown for me on a crossing route. But Logan Kyle, so it is interesting, though. Do you expect them to use maybe 2 tight ends, maybe more 2 tight end sets, but then you're taking a wide receiver off the field? How do you expect to have this tight end group kind of shake out if they seemingly have 3 really good guys?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating because Thompson and Kyle seem like probably the top receiving threats, and they're kind of built like that, right? Both 6'3", 235 essentially. So they're built like that. They've got good speed, good hands. Kai Wright's a monster. I mean, he's like an extra offensive lineman, which is a little bit cliche, but 6'3", 260. And if you watch him last year, like he's a darn good blocker. So I'd imagine
he can catch. He had a good game against Coastal catching the ball.
I imagine he'll have a pretty big role because of what they could do with play action with him. And then in the run game too, he's just such a physical blocker. So I think I don't know, you can do a lot with those 3 guys, but I'm pretty excited about that group. I was a little bit concerned initially losing Zach Horton because he was such a talented player, but I think they've got enough to sort of make up for it. I also think Thompson has a chance to really fit Chesney's scheme much better than Cignetti's. That always felt like a clunky fit because Cignetti, I think, was valuing blocking more than anything else out of the tight end, where I think Thompson and his pass catching ability could really do damage over the middle of the field.
Yes, I'm high on Taylor Thompson. He was a star player his freshman year for Charlotte. I believe was on Conference USA all freshman team, kind of tailed off. I believe he was struggling with some injuries.
Yeah.
Found his way to JMU for his junior year. That's a good. I love that pickup in the portal when it happened. I still have high expectations for Taylor Thompson. Moving from that, do you want to let's keep to offense?
Yeah, let's go offense.
So excuse my
Same page.
scrolling. Excuse my scrolling for the YouTube audience. Unfortunately, Twitter makes you have to buy a blue check now to stream on Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, so we may have to invest in a blue check.
Yeah, it's not that expensive. Okay.
It was just more the principle.
I totally agree with you.
Okay, so running backs here. Can I just say right off the jump who I'm most excited for?
Yes.
And it's not particularly close.
Uh-huh.
Joby Mallory.
Thank you.
You're telling
dude.
me he's
Oh my.
5'11", 236 with speed? The
Okay.
Portland State transfer from the FCS? He doesn't have a huge workload. Not a lot of tread on those tires.
Yeah, this is where
36.
This is where I start to hit you with some stats. So the rosters, like old JMU rosters,
236.
236.
Bro,
The
that's
old,
almost my weight.
he's
I'm
3 pounds heavier than Jacob Dobbs is listed at.
I'm 6'2".
This man
260. He is only 24 pounds lighter than me and 3 inches shorter.
See,
And he can run a 4.4, and I run a 7.2.
So this is where I feel like I might have undersold me, especially some of these spring transfers where I was like, oh yeah, Mallory's a cool depth piece. I started looking into it more today. He was like, I think somebody had tweeted that he was like the second highest graded FCS running back last year, which I think might have been a Pro Football Focus thing or something. But anyway, he had 103 carries for over 600 yards, so averaging 6 yards a carry, over 6 yards a carry. Of his 103 carries, 12 of them were touchdowns. The man is a beast. He
12% of his touches, and 1 of every 10. Let's round down.
Was a touchdown.
1 of every 10 touches is a touchdown. So if he's rushing it 20 times in a game, statistically speaking, based on his career, that's 2 touchdowns.
Just an unbelievable player. He has 6 touchdown game against Eastern Washington. Good speed. He gives him sort of this bruising back, obviously, at 236. That's a crazy underrated pickup to go with Adai and Petaway, who are supposed to be studs. I don't know. This room, I'm kind of going crazy. So I was looking at Mallory specifically because the roster only goes back with weights to 2013, which is kind of surprising. But anyway, he's the heaviest running back in that span. Okay.
What?
No, they have never had somebody since 2013, 236 or higher. The heaviest they had, Jawan Latney was 230 in 2013, and then Latrell Palmer.
Jawan Latney, Massaponax alum, my high school.
There you go. And Latrell Palmer in 2019 was 228. So both those guys pretty similar, but like Mallory's like a stronger early career Latrell Palmer to go with Adai and Petaway. My God.
It's very exciting. Real quick story on Jawan Latney. He was about that size as a senior in high school too. And my school ran like the Navy triple option.
Oh
and
God.
He was the dive back. And I think he ran for about 250 yards a game.
Yo, that's nuts, man.
And he had breakaway speed. He would run away from kids at the high school level.
I'm a sucker for a big running back. But they also have Wayne Knight can sort of fill the Solomon Van Horst role, I think. And Tyler Purdy has some similar skills, even though he's 5'11", 208. I was watching some Holy Cross film today, as one does. Solid player for them. Purdy, again, he didn't have a lot of touches. Same with Mallory. Neither of those guys had a ton of touches, but really efficient when they get them. And that stands out from last year, because how many times last year did we have conversations where we're like, they're using 3 or 4 backs and none of them can get into a rhythm because they're not getting enough touches? Well, I think Purdy and Mallory don't need like a rhythm. You could give them 5 carries in a game, and I think they could produce with those 5.
I wish we asked Delvin about that. Is it true?
Me too.
I'm now going back on. I wish we had asked Delvin. Does it matter if they get a lot of run? I just got to say, Wayne Knight has exited the portal.
He's a fun one, man. He can do a lot of things. And his brother, I mean, Ymir's probably got a. I don't know. They're both good, but I like Ymir maybe a little more. But they're both really, really athletic, talented guys.
All right. Speaking of athletic, talented guys, quarterback. So the presumptive starter is Dylan Morris, 6'1", 202 out of Puyallup, Washington, transfer from the University of Washington. You got Billy Atkins, of course. You still got Alonzo Barnett. You got J.C. Evans. J.C. Evans, 6'5", 211 out of Miami. But anything jump out on the quarterbacks? I feel like we know who QB1 is, so this one isn't. And you only play one, hopefully, all season. So,
yeah, I'm talking about sort of the athletic freaks here across positions. I'm not sure some of the quarterbacks fall into this category.
J.C.
Respectfully to
Evans,
them.
may 6'5".
JC Evans is the one. JC Evans is the one who like carries them where you're like, okay, like dope, 6'5", 211, but decent chance I would think that he redshirts this year just because of the depth. But yeah, Morris is the starter, and while he isn't like the tallest guy in the world, he can sling it.
Then you got punters, Ryan Hansen, 6'2", 219. He's really good at punting.
Yep. Check.
Offensive line. Is there anyone in specific you want me to look at? Or just
this one,
all of them?
This one might be worth going to the top, sorting by weight, and then going through. Because it's
all right. I'm gonna take this off so you don't.
Yeah, they got some big dudes here. So I'll go through some quick stats I found. They have 21 guys listed as offensive linemen this year. The average weight I found in my calculation, which I did not double check, is 312 pounds. Okay, pretty impressive.
That's probably helped a lot by Deacon Rawls. The freshman's freaking 361.
For comparison, though, 2016 the average was 293, national championship team. So they're like 20 pounds heavier up front on average from what I found. I also tweeted the other day a little stat, but this is before they updated the roster. But like, there's some big dudes.
Before we get too deep into offensive line, real quick, I missed this comment, so apologize. Okay. David Robertson, back to quarterbacks real quick. Brett Griffiths had a strong spring game. Any thoughts about him? I just want to say this. I want to be on the record, very crystal clear on this. Dylan Morris is going to start at quarterback next year. Brett Griffiths may not ever sniff the two deep. Brett Griffiths, great. He had a fantastic spring game. I would be shocked if he is in the two deep. I think it's going to go Dylan Morris, Alonzo Barnett, and Billy Atkins.
That would be my guess too. Griffiths maybe becomes a little more interesting after Morris graduates, and then depending on what happens in the portal, if he stays, because he does fit the Morris mold, but they also recruited J.C. Evans, who is absolutely not that kind of like 6 foot quarterback. So we'll see what they want to do. But
so good that he's progressing in his development. Yes. Which is really big for the coming years, but I don't expect to see Brett Griffiths near the field as a player, as a starter this year. Sorry. Okay, back to offensive line. Let's dive in with Deacon Rawls, a freshman who is closer to 400 pounds than he is 300.
He's huge, man. Okay, but that some of that is just us getting excited about size, obviously. But I feel like at times the last few years with Signetti, it was like he was finding guys who like, it's not about the size, it's what you do with it. Chesney seems like a size matters guy. if we're looking at his recruiting, we're looking at what he's doing here. 6'5", 361. I mean, that's just a large dude. I was seeing Georgia, all their like incoming offensive linemen that they've added in like their class of 2025 are all like 350, 360, 370. So I think maybe that's the new thing. But some schools have done that where they bring in a guy at 360. I would not anticipate Deacon Rawls playing ever at 360. My guess is that he might even redshirt this year, and then you see him next year closer to like 330. But it's fun on paper. But they have like their starting guys, the guys who look like they have a chance to start. Carter Sweezy, Josh Toner, Cole Potts. You go down the list. They're like 320 and above. Some of these guys, you guys have guys around 315. You really don't have many guys who are sniffing the two deep that would be under 300. I think Jesse Ramel is 297, if I'm not mistaken. But like Tyshawn Wyatt's massive. Quincy Jenkins, the Campbell transfer who we spoke to, is huge. The size is really impressive. I don't know. I'd be shocked if the running game doesn't go a lot better this year because they have some dudes who can really lean on you.
Jesse Ramel, 6'4", 297 out of Binghamton, New York, the redshirt junior. That's left tackle size. That's spry left tackle that can get out there on the side. So we might be seeing Jesse Ramel stay around that sub 300 because you don't necessarily want your left tackle to be a big, slow type of guy.
Unless it's Tyshawn Wyatt at 320 because he's just a Beast.
Tyshawn Wyatt may move to right tackle, but Tyshawn
Well,
Wyatt
unless you
also,
want McMurtry at right tackle, which I feel like is probably how it goes.
and I'm scrolling up, you see here, if you're listening or watching on YouTube, McMurtry,
303.
where is geez Louise.
They're huge, dude. Tanner Morris is 308. He was sub 300 last year at center. I mean, there's some big dudes and like a good amount of depth. I don't know. It's Josh Toner can play a bunch of positions. He's 323 now. I feel like the running game this year, they're going to be tough to stop.
Cole Potts, 6'3", 321. Evan Bushong, a freshman, is 315.
They're huge, dude. Like Brett Davis, 302, 6'4",
The
302.
I forgot about the Georgetown transfer, Luke Potma, 306.
I think he was second team All Patriot League last year. Like he's a guy another spring guy who's probably going under the radar. Massive. But it was getting me excited looking at those guys because I think the offensive line, and I think having a new coaching staff for the offensive line, I don't want to say it's necessarily a good thing because Robo was so good. I do think a change of pace for them based on how the running game went last year could potentially be valuable in some ways. So, yeah, I mean, I like what they have on the coaching staff, and I think the offensive line has a chance to be one of the most dominant units in the Sun Belt.
All right. So from offensive line, let's jump over to the defense. I don't think we have any remaining offensive position
I
groups.
don't
So
think so.
you got Ray Scott, 246, Jacob Dobbs, 233. And these are thick. Like, it's not this, like, I don't mean to be rude when I say this. Offensive linemen sometimes is not all muscle.
It shouldn't be. That'd be crazy. 361 muscle.
Linebackers, 246, that's muscle.
Yeah. So I do have linebacker stats, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Okay. So this team has 4 linebackers over 230 pounds.
Yes, or 230 or above.
Yes.
Please word it correctly.
Thank you. They had 0 such linebackers last season. Kurt Signetti. 2021, the last FCS season, 0 guys over 230. That season, 2021, they had 4 guys at 220 or above. This year, there are 8 linebackers at 220 or above. Torres Jones, last year, I think listed him at 214 up to 224, which maybe helps him avoid some injuries. That's a really athletic group with a lot more size. It just looks more like an FBS linebacker group than some of the units they've had with guys at like 205.
Torres Jones this year as a redshirt senior, 6'2", 224. I expect him to have a much better year than he did last year. I think he's going to return to all Sun Belt type of form.
I think so too. Trent Hendrick's a big guy, 6 feet 230. I mean, I love the linebacker room. And then they also added Mans, the Colorado and Maine transfer, who can also kind of rush the passer really well off the edge. They list him as a linebacker, 6'3", 230. He's a unique player that they can do a lot with.
Yeah.
That's a great group again.
Then going from linebacker, kicker.
Yeah, they got kickers.
Who's going to be the starter? It's Noah Rulas, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
He should be the starter UConn transfer.
He's the one I miss a lot of kicks with in college football 25. Like a lot. He misses 1 extra point a game.
Here's where we're about to go crazy.
All right. So let me just let me set the table, and then you hit me with your drooling stats. So Emmanuel Bush, massive now, puts on some weight, gets up to 328. Chris Fitzgerald, 5'11", 304, big guy.
Huge.
Terry Lockett is at 280, and he's going to be more of a probably a edge type of guy at that
I
size.
think they can stick him in the middle too.
But I think he can move around, so that's very positive. Amar Thomas is 251, Eric O'Neal is 250, and Lloyd Summerall is 6'6", 245. And Lloyd Summerall in my college football 25 dynasty, #1 in Heisman voting right now.
That's impressive. They're large. They're very, very large. So they have 3 defensive linemen listed at 300 pounds or more, all more than 300 pounds. 3 guys. First time, right? The rosters go back with weight to 2013. This is the first time since then they've ever had 2 guys who weighed at least 300 pounds on the defensive line, and they have 3. They're huge. I mean, that's like Emmanuel Bush, man. You're going up against North Carolina's offensive line. He's got like 40 pounds on one of their guards. It's like a Coastal Carolina transfer who's really talented. But he's like 5'11", 290, super undersized. But Bush in there, 6'1", 330. My God. He's huge. Fitzgerald can back him up pretty easily. And then you've got some depth behind him. Obviously, we like Eric O'Neill at defensive end, Lloyd Summerall, some of those guys, Amar Thomas. But man, that's a large human, Emmanuel Bush.
And JMU expected to run the 4-2-5 this year under new defensive coordinator Lyle Hemphill. And with that 4-2-5, you're going to have a nose tackle and a defensive tackle.
Mhm.
Emmanuel Bush most likely will take over that nose tackle position. You'll have Chris Fitzgerald in there as probably the other defensive tackle. And then you have Samson Ogande. Unsure how much time he'll get. The redshirt freshman, though, is one of those 3 guys over 308, maybe rotating in. Daryl Deneau in there. Terry Lockett is probably going to bounce inside and out. I mean, with a number like a 90, you're probably going to be bouncing inside and out. I mean, this defensive line on the interior should be very good against the run.
I'm also fascinated, and I wonder if we'll get any information on, you mentioned Sampson at 308 pounds. He came to JMU as an edge. Like, he was like 240 when he committed. They got him at 308. So I don't know what their plans with him are, but he was like looking like he was going to be like a 270-pound defensive end for a while. And then they updated the roster. I think he was 280 before they updated, and he's just like 30 pounds heavier. So I don't know what the plans are. 263, they listed him as, like, I guess when he got there, so he probably added some weight from high school. But from 263 to 308, my God.
He also lost an inch.
He's shrinking. But I'm excited to see what the plan is for him, because there's not often you have guys who you recruited as like this really talented edge, and then maybe it's just a defensive tackle or a 300-pound defensive end, which seems unlikely.
Can we talk about this guy real quick?
Yes, our guy, Brian Snow.
What was my theory on him?
Okay, so he's a transfer from Dickinson, but he hasn't played. He didn't play football. Dickinson was D3. He was really good there. Didn't play in 2022 or 2023. And I believe your theory was that he was just like at JMU for grad school in Chesney.
That's right, because he's getting his graduate cert. This is from some LinkedIn sleuthing. I tried to message. I think I tried to connect with him on LinkedIn to try to get him to do like an off the record interview. Chris Brooks, if you're listening. No, I didn't. So played 4 years at Dickinson College, probably majored in cyber intelligence or something like that. He's currently getting his graduate certificate at JMU. My theory is that he was hanging out probably with some football players. Bob Chesney heard through the grapevine that this like a Division III star just at JMU somehow with eligibility. Not sure how eligibility works anymore.
So he only played 3 years from 2017 to 2021. He somehow only played 3 years during that span.
Okay, so he has one last year of eligibility. Bob Chesney, in my head, goes up to him. Hey, man, do you want to try and compete for a spot? And yeah.
I don't know if he's walk-on or scholarship or what, but that's a fun one, man. He's a fun one. They list him as a defensive end, I think.
294 career tackles over 3 years of playing football, 26 and a half TFLs, 8 sacks, 1 pick, 12 pass breakups, 3 fumble recoveries, a forced fumble, Division III, College Football Network, second team All-American, All-Centennial Conference, unanimous first team selection, first team All-Centennial Conference in 2019. I mean, the dude's a stud at the Division III level.
And he was playing linebacker. And now they list him at sort of a defensive lineman, which I find interesting. But I mean, if nothing else, you have a guy who like just loves football on your roster, giving you some reps in practice on scout team or something. But hey, I dig it.
Okay. That's defensive line.
Secondary.
I got to get there. Sorry. my computer kind of messed up. I went back to cards. I have to.
Mm.
Do you want secondary by height or weight? Probably height, right?
Let's do height. That's my height stats are what I have for you.
All right. So safeties, there's a lot of them. Safeties
Yeah,
and corners.
we can start with either. Doesn't matter.
All right, we'll do corners
Okay.
because Daniel Merriman has a nice little. Was interested by some position changes for the safeties.
Yes. Very true.
Okay.
Here
they are.
we go. Okay. My stat for this is they have 6 corners listed at 6 feet or above. For comparison's sake, they had 3 last year, 3 in 2021, and then 3 going back to 2016, the national championship team. So this is a taller cornerback room than most JMU seasons. And your projected starters, Terrence Spence, Chauncey Logan, both about 6'2", 6'1" for Logan, and right around 200 pounds for both. Those are some tall, athletic corners. And then they moved Evan Spivey. I think he was listed as a safety. He's about 6'1", 200 pounds. He's listed at corner now. So those 3 really jump out.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Why are we assuming Terrence Spence is cornerback too?
Hey, it could be up for competition, but I was just basing that off of what he did at Holy Cross.
Yeah,
Played really well.
I think he's
Special
listed as
teams
cornerback
wizard.
too in Phil Steele's
Phil
book,
Steele
too.
has him there. So I think he makes sense going into camp. And then I wonder if Spivey can compete with him. And then I'm really curious. You've obviously got those 2 Power 5 transfers in Mullen and Booth, Trayvell Mullen from Indiana and Antoine Booth from Michigan State. Not transfers coming in this past year, but they've been in the program for a year or more. And then they added Jordan Taylor. I think he was a D2 stud, has track speed. I wonder if he's more of a special teams guy or if they expect him to contribute. And then, of course, my guy, Milt Ferguson, the new deep end. True freshman, ton of talent, highly recruited. I wonder if he's able to break in at all. But it's a good group, and they're a lot bigger than they've been in years past, which is kind of exciting.
Jordan Taylor, he's listed as boundary corner number 2. So he's listed as the backup right now to Terrence Spence in Phil Steele's College Football 24. Also, huge thunderstorm outside right now in Richmond. If my power goes out, sorry.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce that, Bennett? On the screen, Jordan Taylor.
Tusculum.
One more time.
Tusculum.
No.
What is it?
Tusculum.
Fuck.
So I just was curious if you got that. It's an exciting group.
And Hopper. True freshman. A lot of talent there.
In case you're curious, Chauncey Logan is cornerback 1 in the game, and they have Antoine Booth, the redshirt junior transfer from Michigan State, as the cornerback 2. There's no Terrence Spence in the game. They kind of messed up JMU's roster.
Can I say something?
You want me to stop talking about college football?
No. I'm still slightly concerned about corner. They're bigger. But I don't know. Pons was cornerback 1 last year at the end of the year.
He was cornerback 2. He always played boundary corner. Chauncey was field corner the entire year.
They list him at field? But okay, Pons was the best corner on the team.
Yes, but sorry, okay. I'm putting some respect on Chauncey's name.
Chauncey's very good. But Pons wasn't getting beat last year at all.
Yeah, I know.
What I worry about a bit is that they've got guys who are a bit taller, but are they still going to get beat a little more? Can the safeties help them more? That was part of the issue last year. Is the safeties were.
I think the issue last year, more than the cornerback struggling, was that there was no safety help. Safeties just were kind of bad all year.
That's fair.
But I see what you mean. I mean, Chauncey Logan, it does worry me a little bit that it's Chauncey Logan and Terrence Spence, and there's no depth behind that. Who's the slot corner? Who goes in if Chauncey tweaks his ankle? Who goes in if Terrence Spence dislocates a finger and is out for 2 weeks? Because Evan Spivey's a redshirt freshman. Tajay Hooper is a freshman. Justin Eaglin really hasn't seen the field as a cornerback in his Duke's career. Trayvell Mullen was a former 4-star recruit for Indiana. Hasn't seen the field, though, as a cornerback for the Dukes. Antoine Booth hasn't seen the field. Jordan Taylor is a Division II transfer. Milt Ferguson is a freshman. And Jamari Selden is a redshirt sophomore who we haven't seen a lot as a cornerback. So it is worrisome that you say that and you're like, hasn't played 4 career snaps at corner. Like, that is worrisome. I agree.
I think it might be the weakest position group as it stands right now.
I would agree with that.
Because of who they listed at safety. To answer your question about like backups, they might honestly be at safety right now. And then if there's an injury, they switch them.
Okay, so you say that because Jacob Thomas still there at safety, but then they put Chris Sheeran, who was a cornerback at Missouri and UConn, and then they also listed Ja'Kai Young, a former cornerback, as a safety from Gardner-Webb, and Ray Williams. I forget if Ray Williams was listed as a cornerback at Howard, but he's playing safety.
Yeah, so that makes me pretty excited about that room, to be honest with you. That's a pretty good group.
I'm really interested to see who starts and how that all shakes out. Who's the rover? Who I think Ray Williams is going to be the rover.
Because I really like Ray Williams. I was watching some Sheeran tape today, as one does. He's a stud, man. He's a really good player. Jacob Thomas, up to almost 220 pounds. He can sort of be that enforcer. I know they really like what he's done in the spring and summer. There's a lot of talent there. I like Ja'Kai Young too, and think he's good. So I feel pretty strong about safety. My stat there is not all that sexy, but they have 9 guys listed at safety who are 6 feet or taller compared to 5 last year. They also have 6 over 200 pounds or more, compared to 3 in 2021 and then 3 in 2016. So they're clearly getting a lot bigger, just about every position from the FCS days, which makes sense. But yeah, safety, they have some really impressive size for the guys expected to start.
And Chase Regan and KJ Flo are still there. Like, I think they're freshmen, though. Those are 2 freshmen that are most likely to make an impact this season, and they're at the safety spot.
Regan also put in work in the strength program because he was like coming in at like, I want to say he was 170 or below, and now they list him at 187. So he's getting bigger. He's getting up there. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets himself over 200 pretty quickly.
All right. Anything else you got to add? Because that's defensive line, linebacker, safety, cornerback, and we went through wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, quarterback, and running back.
I'm just excited for football season. I think they're huge. I think the talent is there. It's just kind of about piecing it together. But you go and you watch some of the Holy Cross footage, the commitment they have to the running game, the guys they have at running back, the guys they have at offensive line, the receiver talent, Dylan Moore. I don't know. I'd be shocked if the offense isn't elite. And then I think the defense has the pieces to sort of fit it together. But that's probably, if you're picking one of the 2 sides of the ball, I have more questions defensively right now.
Yeah. All right. That brings us to listener questions to finish out today's episode. Danny Wood at DWood89 asks, how many games will we have to be ranked? How many games will we have to win to be ranked to start out? I'm guessing quite a few with our week set schedule that's backloaded.
I could see them if they beat North Carolina and they're 3-0, so they go Charlotte, Gardner-Webb, Carolina. I could see them getting in. They might need to win one or two after that, maybe, but I guess it depends on what Carolina does right to start the year too.
Yeah, I think probably 5. I think you start 5-0.
5-0.
Because I don't think I think UNC is going to come into the year with low expectations. So, like, as much as that win would carry weight in the JMU community, I don't know how much on the national scale. It's not like going to Michigan State and taking them out in basketball.
They do have, there's a chance UNC is undefeated. So they open at Minnesota and then they play Charlotte and North Carolina Central. So if they're 3-0, maybe it carries a little more weight. But even then, I'm not sure Carolina would be like a lock for the top 25 themselves.
Yeah. Big time that the Dukes are coming off of a bye week of their own into that UNC game. I think it gives them a big leg up against the Tar Heels.
Really emphasizes the importance of that Charlotte game, right? If you can win that, you should beat Gardner-Webb and then you have a bye. You're going into like mid to late September feeling pretty confident if you can get by Charlotte, essentially.
Yeah. And Gardner-Webb. Don't sleep on an FCS.
Don't sleep on it.
We saw what Bucknell did last year. Made them bench their quarterback.
That's right. Maybe you don't even start Morris in that game. You just avoid any potential issues.
No, we're not doing this whole Rick and roll again.
You give Barnett a chance of redemption.
All right. Mangy Dog asked, did Eikenberry extend his contract because Fitz sort of apologized? Yes.
There was a clause in there, yeah, that if he would apologize, he would get 2 additional seasons.
Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. On
You're
that,
not sold yet.
I'm not making any comments.
Okay. Fair enough.
I feel like I just don't want baseball fans down my throat next year. Although I'm right. I'm always right. Time will tell. It'll bear itself out, the fruit of our labor. I don't know where I was going.
I don't know, but I like that.
All right. Anything else you got to add before we get up on out of here?
I don't think so. We're getting close to camp. We're not quite there.
We're almost there. Charlotte, August 31st. I'll be in attendance. Are you going to the Charlotte game?
Possibly.
Jeez Louise,
We
man.
gotta
Make up
figure
your
out. We
mind.
gotta figure out plans. I would like to go.
I got contacts in Charlotte, man. Come on down.
I don't know what that means.
It means
Rory
come down to Charlotte.
Coffee golf coming up. I got Rory McIlroy winning the Open Championship.
That's a horrible pick.
No, it's redemption.
No, it's not. He's never. When has he ever redeemed himself?
All the time. After his Masters joke way, way back, he won the U.S. Open the next major. He loves redemption. Oh, here's a good question about what were you talking about on our podcast?
We can talk about golf. David Robertson brought this up after we talked about Brett Griffiths and Dylan Morris earlier in the podcast. Barnett and Atkins both bombed when they had their chance as a starter. Who gets the 2 spot between them? Probably whoever performs better that week in practice.
Okay, but this is a great question and something to keep an eye on, because last year McLeod got dinged up a couple of times, but like always played through it. There are major concerns that like they could have the best offense in the Sun Belt, and then if Morris goes down, you do have 2 guys that in their only starting opportunities like looked pretty bad.
I don't think the Dukes are going to have the best offense in the Sun Belt.
You don't think so? I think there will be like
Texas State.
Texas State's legit. Texas State's gonna be great.
Texas State has the reigning Sun Belt Player of the Year.
System quarterback. They're all system. Every JMU quarterback under Cignetti is a system quarterback. Okay, Texas State probably has the best, but I think they'll be one of the best offenses in the Sun Belt. I think Morris is going to cook. But if Morris goes down,
remember that 3-game stretch in 2022 where Centeio, you lose to Georgia Southern, he gets hurt going into Marshall, Billy Atkins starts, and it's the worst game of football we've seen in quite some time. And then the next week, Centeio starts against Louisville, but shouldn't have started that game. Yeah. And the offense was lethargic and terrible. That was the worst 3 weeks of my life.
That's exactly right. It was
outside of being laid off. That was the worst 3 weeks of my life.
It's a miserable 3 weeks. I don't know. It'll be fascinating to see the quarterback 2 battle, and I hope we don't get any storylines about a QB1 battle. I hope that doesn't even happen this year.
I would say Barnett is going to be QB2.
His talent's there. Fascinating that he didn't beat out McLeod. So
we'll see. Are there any new specialists from M4B10? Yes, the kickers. They got 2 new kickers. The UConn transfer, Noah Ruelas. I'm probably mispronouncing his name. Gotta wait for a pronunciation guide to drop.
But he'll be the starting kicker for sure.
He likely will be the starting kicker, 99%. They have a Central Connecticut State transfer that came in as well. I think he's only ever attempted like 2 extra points in his career.
He's pretty experienced, yeah.
He won't start. Then they have Ryan Hansen, the punter, who transferred in from Arkansas State ahead of last season. So this will be his second year with JMU. And then they have like a freshman punter as well.
Yeah. And I suppose one of the transfers could earn like a kickoff return or punt return job, but I feel like that'll probably be like totally open for competition come the summer.
My thing is, I think we'll see probably like new kick returners often.
I could see that. Yeah.
Just the way Chesney seems to approach special teams. He wants the best players out there, and he wants it to be an actual weapon, unlike Kurt Cignetti, who was fine with just throwing out a fair catch specialist. All right. For Bennett Conlon, I'm Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for tuning into the JMU Sports News Podcast presented by Bet Online. We'll be back sometime next week. We have some great guests lined up and great people to talk to throughout this offseason as we barrel towards the start of the college football season. August 31st, the Dukes will head down to the Queen City to take on Charlotte. Thank you to Delvin Joyce for talking all things JMU football. It was a great time. Try to have him on a few more times this year because his insights were impeccable. Bennett, you have a great rest of your night.
You too, man.
See ya.